Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Aaron, and this is the finale. After a month of looking back at our favorite things from 2018 and counting down numbers 100 through 11, we have finally come to the top 10 comics of 2018. I don't mind telling you folks, it has been a long, hard trip to get here. I have been reading books non-stop since December in order to make sure that I covered as much ground as I possibly could, and I read as many books as I could find in order to make a list that I could actually feel proud of. So today, we are going to get into the final 10 books in our countdown, but before we start with number 10, as always, a few honorable mentions. Yes, that's right. If you've watched this for the last 4 years, then you know every single year there's always some book that I forget to put on the list. There's a book that I read and I enjoy and I think absolutely deserves to be in the top 100, and then I just forget to include it. And this year, the book that I forgot to put on the list was nothing. We finally did it. We finally broke the curse. We finally have a year where I didn't forget to put a book on the list. We did it, everybody! That being said, as I mentioned in the very first episode, 2018 really was an amazing year for comics. I had more nominees for the top 100 list than I've ever had before, and it actually really hurt me to not put some of these books in the top 100 list. The very first year that I did this, when you got around to like number 100, I was like, well, I guess that's a good enough book to be in the top 100. This year, I was getting down to like number 120, and I was still like, no, I wish you could be on here. You were so good. So, you know what? For the first time ever, we actually are going to have some honorable mentions. Cold Spot, an amazing horror series by Cullen Bunn. That book, no pun intended, really did give me a chill with every single issue. Flavor, a very fun, upbeat book that is all about this underground world of cooking, which I don't know is kind of a thing that I actually have a weird obsession with, like cooking being used as a way to tell stories. I actually think that's just a really cool thing. Berlin, a great historical book that probably, in all honesty, does deserve to be in the top 100, but I started reading it 2 weeks ago when I started reading 30 other books to consider for this list, and Berlin is about 500 pages long, so sadly I just didn't get far enough into it in order for me to feel comfortable putting it on this list. These Savage Shores, I mentioned how Vault Comics is putting out there some of the most imaginative series and premises that I've ever read in comics, and These Savage Shores is all about vampires in the 1700s going to India where they encounter something even darker. That's something that I never thought I would ever utter, but man, is that a creative idea for a book. And the last honorable mention, We Are the Danger. This is a very fun series about a group of friends coming together to form a band and finding your place amongst them. And honestly, it does deserve to be in the top 100. But remember how I said I want to judge these books completely without bias? I know the guy who makes this book. So I realized early on, it's totally impossible for me to remove all bias from this book. So sadly, I just couldn't include it on the list because I knew that my own personal interest in it would probably cloud my judgment a bit, but it is a really good book and you should go out there and support him. I'm just gonna hold on that for a second so you can all remember that book. Go and support this writer. But that's not the only shout out that I want to give real quick before we actually get into the number 10 book. I want to go ahead and just thank a couple people real quick. I want to thank everybody out there who in the very first month of us having it up and running decided to donate to our Patreon page. I told you guys that it was going to take us a while to actually figure out what we wanted to do with the Patreon page, and we finally got to that point, but I can't say it enough. Thank you guys for being willing to go in there and support us, even when you knew that it was going to take us a little while to get that thing up and running. That was very nice of you guys, and I really appreciate it. Also, thank you to everybody out there who's been following me on Twitter, because you guys have stuck around when I was up at like 5 or 6 a.m. with no sleep editing these videos together every single night this month, and you saw me just going on there with whatever crazy thing was going on in my head, and you could tell that, yeah, I was just being completely overworked, and you guys still cheered me on, and I really appreciate that. Also, thank you to everybody who's been following us on Twitch, because since I've been doing these videos non-stop this entire month, I haven't really been able to go on there that much. So I know you guys might be missing me over there. Trust me, I'm missing being on there as well. But thank you guys for still sticking around and still realizing, all right, he'll be back. He'll come back as soon as all this is done. That's really appreciative of you guys. Also, I just want to give some really random shout outs here. Thank you to the guys over at Super Beard Bros and at Rage Select, because as I mentioned, I've been editing these videos until about 6 a.m. every single morning, and I needed something on in the background in order to keep me from going insane, so I've been having your Let's Plays running in the background as I edit these things, and it actually really helped keep my spirits high. And the last shout out that I'm going to give actually goes out to a fan. Thank you to every single fan out there who supports this channel. It means so much to me that you guys are willing to watch all these videos and spread the word around the internet. Every now and again I see someone on Twitter recommending my stuff to other people, and man, that feels good. I really appreciate seeing you guys just spreading the word about this stuff all around the internet and trying to get more people watching the channel. I appreciate that so much. But I do every now and again get people requesting shout outs on the channel. They say like, hey, can you mention my name in a video? Hey, can you bring up this thing about me? Hey, can you talk about this thing? It'll mean so much to me. And sadly, I can't really do that, because if I start doing it for one person, I'd have to do it for everyone. And like I said, I get a decent number of these requests. However, I did get contacted this week by a friend of a fan of the show, and they told me about how much these videos meant to their friend, how they always watch them, how much it picks them up, and how much they look forward to every single one of these videos. And they also mentioned some stuff that they were going through in their personal life that I'm not going to mention here, because that's personal stuff and I don't need spreading that all around the internet. However, it did really get to me, and I was like, you know what? Joe Conway, you're going to get the very first ever Professor Thorgy fan shout out. I'm gonna pause there so I have time to put in a kick-ass graphic underneath. Hopefully, I might forget doing it because I'm very tired. But alright, no more stalling, no more dilly-dallying, no more coming up with other words that are just here to lengthen this video. Let's go ahead and get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, one last time, thank you so much for sticking with each of these videos. And now, I present you with number 10.
Batman White Knight. In 2017, when this book was announced, I had reached Batman critical mass. I was Batmaned out. Same thing went for the Joker. The two of them were everywhere, and I just needed a break. So when Sean Murphy announced his own original miniseries set in a world where Batman had gone too far, and the Joker had finally taken the medication he needed, which caused him to think clearly, and now he used his brains to try and better Gotham and catch Batman for the police, I thought, okay, sure, that's a unique idea, but I'm done. I'm out. I want no more Batman. And yet this book was so good with how it delved into each of these characters' personalities and broke each of them down in a way that made me look at them completely differently and reimagine all of Gotham in a way that felt refreshing. And then on top of that, threw in there tons of political issues that add a whole new layer to the mythos of Batman, that by the time it was all over, I really wanted more Batman. Number 9, Crowded. In the future, you can get almost anything through crowd-funded or crowd-shared apps. You need a driver? There's an app for that. You want to buy food? There's an app for that. You want to murder someone? Guess what? There's an app for that too. This is the story of a young woman who one day wakes up to find someone has used the totally legal app Reaper to place $1 million bounty on her head. And before you ask how something like that can be totally legal, they actually explain it in great detail in here. They cross every I and dot every T in this one. She then has to hire a bodyguard who now must protect her until the bounty runs out. Problem is, the target is a spoiled brat party girl, and her bodyguard is basically a brick wall of anger given form. So it becomes clear that the real threat isn't the wave of bounty hunters after them, it's each other, as this oddball duo is constantly at each other's throats, even when they have to work together. This might only be number 9, but this is the best comedy of the year. And the best action series of the year. The interactions between our two protagonists was pure concentrated wit, and whenever they get into a shootout or a car chase, I can hear the sound effects and the soundtrack blaring in the background. It's like everything I loved about an Edgar Wright movie turned into a comic. Number 8, Venom. How many times have I complimented Donny Cates over the course of this top 100 list? Doesn't matter because I'm about to do it again. This year, Donny Cates took the Venom title, and like he does with pretty much everything he touches, he kicked the door down and proceeded to start turning everything on its head. The very first thing he did with this character was completely change the origin of the symbiote in a way that made it something so much darker, more sinister than it's ever been, while tying Venom into the larger Marvel universe than he's ever been before. Cates found a way to tie Venom into Thor, and it worked. How does that happen? He also ramped up the terror side of this character to make him feel almost like something out of a Junji Ito book, opened up the door to countless new stories to be told about the unknown era of symbiotes here on Earth, and introduced us to a new villain who isn't just a great fit for Venom. He could end up becoming one of the biggest baddies in the Marvel Universe. Venom for years has been struggling to find his place in the ever-changing Marvel Universe, and this was the year that he finally found it. Number 7, Gideon Falls. When I started Gideon Falls, I had high hopes for it because Jeff Lemire rarely ever lets me down, and within a few pages I thought, oh, I see. This is going to be some down-home Southern Gothic crime thriller mystery, something Coen Brothers style. Okay, I can dig it. I can get into this mystery and see where it goes. Shortly after I started this series, I was already hooked on this story of a priest who had lost his faith, now being reassigned to a town where their last priest mysteriously died. You know things are going to get dark and tense quick. You can just sense it in the air. However, before the first issue was over, they introduced you to the real threat of this series, the Black Barn. Something truly demonic, something that is beyond definition, but just looking at fills you with dread. And after that moment, I realized this was no mere murder mystery or crime thriller. This is something ungodly that will force you to go into a world of madness. This was all just from one panel, and the series after that did not let up. Every new issue provided more questions that are so dark you don't even know if you want the answers to them. Not just to the Black Barn, but to the history of these characters as well. And I can't get through this without mentioning the art by Andrea Sorrentino, who drew panels so gorgeously horrific, they literally made me gasp at times. And yes, I'm using literally correctly there. That's how good they were. Number 6, Immortal Hulk. How weird is it that this year Jeff Lemire gave us a series all about some nightmare dimension creeping into our own and ripping the very fabric of reality apart, and it wasn't the best horror series of the year? And how much weirder is it that the winner of that title is a Hulk book? Well, actually it's not that weird considering that the Hulk started out as a semi-horror themed character, and this year Al Ewing took him back to his roots, and in more ways than one. One of Al Ewing's greatest strengths is the fact that he is a walking encyclopedia of the history of Marvel Comics, and he loves taking that history and bringing it all back around. And this year, when he took the Hulk in a darker direction than we'd ever seen before, well, I won't spoil anything, but let's just say there's more than a few surprises with what else he decided to bring back. And those aren't the only surprises, because Ewing knew exactly how to set up every single spine-chilling moment of this book to shock readers like no other book did this year. What he did to the Hulk feels reminiscent of what Alan Moore did to Swamp Thing, which is a compliment I've never really been able to give any other series out there. And just like that series, I believe what Ewing is doing with the Hulk could be a game changer for that character. Number 5, Green Lantern Earth 1. The Earth 1 series has been known for darker, more realistic tones and for being more open to letting their writers completely reimagine these characters in their own unique visions, but when I saw that Green Lantern would be the next to receive this makeover, I had no idea what to expect from it. But what I got ended up becoming one of my favorite Green Lantern stories ever written. From the team behind Invisible Republic, they brought their vision of a dystopian future and dirty, grizzled extraterrestrial planets to Hal Jordan and created something completely different. Something that felt refreshing and new. It didn't feel like anything we had ever gotten from Green Lantern, and yet it still merged so much of Green Lantern's story together in a way that worked. This story felt like if you took all the superheroics out of Green Lantern and just focused solely on the space exploration, intergalactic wars, and rebellion against mysterious ancient overlords, and it ended up creating a story that I want to follow for years to come. I honestly think the best compliment that I can give this book is that I am a really big Green Lantern fan, and after reading this book, I don't want to go back to the regular Green Lantern. I kind of just want to read this version of the character. Number 4, Descender. Descender for years now has been a favorite of mine, crafting one of the best science fiction space epics I've ever read. And this was the year where it all came to a conclusion, with some of the biggest questions being answered. All of these characters finally coming together, and an explosive confrontation where I couldn't even breathe at times because they kept stacking one new twist on top of another until you had no idea how any of this could possibly end. And you'll have to forgive me for being vague, but when I got to the final page and I realized what that meant, I actually started shouting, "Get the out of here! Get the out of here!" I'm not kidding you, I actually did that when I got to the final page, because it was that brilliant of a direction to go. And as I said, I had always been enjoying this book, but if I can be completely honest, last year they ended up introducing an element to this world that I didn't really think fit all that well, but this finale brought that element back and made it fit so perfectly within the grand scheme of things that it made this entire series go from great to damn near perfect. Number 3, Mr. Miracle. This was our number 1 book of the year last year, and as you can probably tell from watching these videos over the years, thank you for that by the way, that books tend to take a rather large drop the year after they premiere. And the reason for that is that feeling of newness. When a book pops up unlike anything you've ever seen before, it'll get your attention, and you won't believe what you're reading, and you'll want to keep coming back to see where it goes. But after a year of that, you can now start to believe what you're reading, and you can start to see where it's going, and it no longer feels all that refreshing to you, even if the quality is still good. But Mr. Miracle remains at the number 3 spot in its second year, and that's because it was able to keep that surprise going. Every single issue felt important as we continued to explore Mr. Miracle and his war with Apocalypse as he struggled to start his new family back home. By which I mean we continue to explore this metaphor for dealing with post-traumatic stress that comes with the life of a soldier, something that Tom King knows about from first-hand experience, and you can feel that personal touch elevating this book to something special. Every issue of this series didn't just give me some kind of surprise, but a surprise that would just crush you, all leading up to an ending that, well, again, to remain vague, kind of left it up to you to determine what happened. And endings like that can be screwed up so often and so easily, but when they work, they're truly something incredible, and this one worked. Number 2, Saga. Alright, if you've never watched our top 100s before, then you might see this and think, oh, of course Saga is up here. Every comic critic out there always puts Saga at the top. Yeah, I don't. In the past few years, Saga has always been around number 40, around the midpoint of our list, and it's because, well, yes, I do like these characters and this world that we get to explore. Over the past few years, it's kind of been growing a bit stale for me. It felt like I was just too comfortable, like I was just waiting for something that was never going to get here. This was the year that something finally arrived. It felt like for years we had been setting up a fateful encounter between certain characters, and that moment finally arrived this year, and it did not disappoint, as some of the most heartbreaking scenes of the entire series run came from this encounter. I mentioned that unpredictability can help keep a book at a high number on this list, and I didn't see any of this coming. I still can't believe what I read in this book actually happened. This year in Saga was a true shifting point for the series, and it felt like this is what 50 plus issues of the series had all been leading towards, that made you realize just how attached to these characters you had become. But now we finally come to the number 1 book of the year, and I can guarantee that this is going to surprise many of you simply because I had never even heard of this book until I started doing research in order to make this list. Upgrade Soul. Now, you guys will have to excuse me because I'm not going to show you anything of this book other than just the cover, because if I do, then I would risk explaining too much about the book and I would end up taking something away from the experience of discovering it on your own, and I wouldn't dare do that to anyone. Which is going to make this a very difficult book to explain why it's our number one of the year, but hey, I like a challenge, so why not? This is the story of a couple celebrating their 45th anniversary. They love each other, and the two of them have achieved so much in their life, but of course, no matter what you've done, the moment you start feeling your body falling apart as you get older and you're unable to do what you used to be able to, you can't help but wish you could go back. So these two sign up for an experimental procedure that says they can not just give them new bodies, but bodies that are perfect, at the height of their intellectual and physical potential. They sign up for it and, well, let's just say it doesn't go as expected. And that's all I can say. This book creates a situation that goes from horrifying to actually kind of wondrous, then to ominous, then into twists that are like if Cronenberg paired up with Tennessee Williams, a sentence I don't think I've ever said before, all reaching an ending that just leaves you wondering, wait, was that a good ending or a bad ending? And as I said with Mr. Miracle, endings like that are hard to pull off, but if you do it, then they're amazing. And this ending had me going back and forth between and as I pondered what exactly that could mean. This book had me run the full gauntlet of emotions, gave so much depth to even the smallest characters, and by the time that I got to the last 70 pages of this book, I was racing through it because I had to know how it ended. I'm not kidding, I was actually late for a meeting because I had 50 pages left of this book and I kept saying, one more page. Okay, one more. I just need to see how this particular moment ends, and then, oh, things just got a lot worse. Okay, better call in sick because I am not going anywhere right now. I know that for you guys out there, it might not be that rewarding to see an indie original graphic novel that I know most people haven't even heard of be the number one book of the year. It's like watching a Royal Rumble and out of nowhere, some new guy you've never even seen before comes up and smacks the Big Show over the head with a chair and takes the title. Okay, confession time. I don't actually watch wrestling. Is the Big Show still a thing? Is he still around? Was that reference in any way relevant? But I can't help it. I can't put any other book up here. This one earned it. This really was the best comic of 2018. At least in my opinion. Let me know what your favorite book of the year was in the comments down below. And I just want to take this time once again to say thank you to everyone out there who stuck with us, not just through the top 100, but all month long for each of our 2018 retrospectives. As I said, I spent the entire month just making videos and cramming one book after another into my face, and honestly, it's going to feel good to take a break, but we will be back again next week with brand new content. If you really appreciate all these videos, then you can always help us out by supporting us over on Patreon, where each month we're going to give you a podcast exclusive just to the patrons. And you can also follow us around the web on Twitter at twitter.com/ProfessorThordy, or come and join us as we play through video games together over at twitch.tv/ProfessorThordy, which in all honesty is probably where I'm going to be all weekend long. I've missed out on a lot making these videos and I need to play some catch up. Or you can always just share these videos around the web. We work hard on them and I appreciate people spreading the word. It's honestly the best way to help support this channel. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Now go enjoy some great comics. I think I gave you more than enough recommendations. Bye, everyone.